There we go.
All right, well, now that the meeting can be a success because we figured that out, we can start today. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the I almost said June, Governor's Task Force meeting on broadband. We've got another meeting that we're going to be looking for a lot of input from our members in group discussions. But we're going to start out today with some housekeeping items and public comment. Mark, do you want to take those two items?
Yes, thanks, Chris. Great to see everyone, and thanks for attending. Welcome to the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Today is Wednesday, May 15th, 2024. I would just like to remind everyone that this is a public meeting, that it is being recorded. A meeting agenda is available on the Public Service Commission events calendar and also on the task force webpage. Also, in an effort to maintain audio quality, please mute yourself when not speaking. I also ask that any members of the public be mindful of their audio and remain muted throughout the duration of the meeting, other than during the public comment period. I'll go ahead and do roll call for those that are members of the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access. Bob Abrams. Biko Baker. Kwame Barnes. Marta Bechtel.
I'm here.
Thanks, Marta. Brittany Byer.
Here.
Thanks, Brittany. Sal Carranza, let me know if he would not be in attendance today. Lori Collins.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Lori. Angie Dickinson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Emily Dittmar.
Here.
Russ Falkenberg and Celeste Flynn both let me know they wouldn't be in attendance today. Chris Herjong. Justin Hebner. Gail Hike let me know she would not be in attendance today. Barbara Koldels.
Here.
Chris Myers here. State Senator Mark Liner staff. Jose Martinez.
Present.
Thank you. State Representative Mersauer staff.
Here.
Thank you. State Representative Ratcliffe for staff. State Senator Paff for staff. Rachel Shemlin.
Here.
Thank you. Steve and Schneider and Michelle Schuler both let me know they wouldn't be in attendance today. Brett Schupner.
Here.
Thanks, Brett. Josh Shell.
Here.
Thanks, Josh. Chet Strebe. And Chad Young. I do not believe I missed anyone, but if I did, could you please let me know now? Okay, I'll keep an eye on the attendance list. I just wanted to let everybody know we do have a new task force member. His name is Josh Shell. Josh, can you unmute and show us your camera and give an introduction of yourself?
Yep, you bet. Does everybody hear and see me okay?
Sound good.
So yeah, Cliff Note version of myself, Josh Shell, born and raised in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. Attended Marian University, where I received a BS in history with a minor in pre-law in 2009. I had a little wild spirit, so I hiked the entire Appalachian Trail, which led me for the love of traveling, which kind of, oddly enough, landed me in the pipeline industry, being born and raised down the road from Michael's Construction. So I went on a pipeline journey, fell back in love with my wife from college, started raising a family, and got into gas and electrical and telecommunication distribution work, which led me to be home more often, and subsequently led me 3 years ago to start my own company, Badgerland Connections. I am part owner and president of the company. We focus on utility construction. And I'm fortunate enough to be here with you guys. Hopefully have some input and go from there.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, if there's nothing else, Chris, is it all right if I go into public comment?
Absolutely.
All right. Now is the time where we will allow for public comment. This is a sole opportunity for members of the public to make a comment during this meeting. Members of the public may soon unmute and make a public comment should they desire. I do ask that the comments remain brief and also pertain to the subject of broadband access. You may also utilize the chat function in Zoom to let us know you would like to make a public comment as well. I will ask for public comment now. Second call for public comment. And last call for public comment. Hearing none, as a note, written public comment is also accepted on an ongoing basis. We have directions on how to do so on our task force webpage, along with other information like meeting agendas, recording, and updates. I will hand it back to Chris to lead us through the rest of the agenda. Chris?
All right, thank you, Mark. So item number 3 on our agenda today is updates from the Public Service Commission by Alyssa on a number of different programs. Alyssa?
I'm gonna pass it to Rory. Sorry, we traded.
All right, always a couple updates from the commission, but happy to run through those. First, I know you all know everything about BEAD all the time, but just an update, our challenge process is in progress. That challenge process closes in just 2 weeks' time, so time is flying. We do have kind of a 20-day pre-review period that will end this weekend, so hopefully folks, if they want to have us take an extra look and make sure that everything's submitted correctly, they can do that in the next couple days. We're already starting to see some challenges come through, but I'm sure the deluge is yet to come. Alongside that, we're producing some FAQs for our BEAD challenge process, which we're hoping to publish in the next couple days. I think that'll be a great resource for folks as they navigate the last bit of the first set of this challenge. So once the challenge process completes on May 29th, staff will work very studiously for a couple days, try and get everything wrapped up, and then we'll open a rebuttal period and move on from there. On the other half of the equation, volume 2, our beloved allocation process is still pending approval from our federal partners. So no updates on that side, but we are pushing hard to get things moving as best we can. In other news, digital equity state capacity grants are pending applications with the federal government. So the state of Wisconsin, PSC, is going to apply on behalf of the state of Wisconsin. And that application is due kind of at the end of May. So we're pushing forward with that. Really excited to see that work coming to fruition. It'll be interesting to see the implementation on that. And then, as you all probably already know, we have our Capital Projects Fund Digital Connectivity and Navigators program, doing kind of Wi-Fi in multifamily buildings, and also kind of devices and then navigators that pair along with those to help folks really utilize the devices and Wi-Fi. That application period ends June 19th, so just a little over a month, and we're hoping to get a lot of participation there. It's about a little over $30 million, so a good pot of money there. And then lastly, I know we have extension folks on the call, so I will again throw a shout out to the extension team who has been putting on some really great workshops all over the state for broadband. I see nodding heads because I know some members have already attended here. The last 2 workshops on the schedule, there's one in Antigo on May 22nd next week. And then there's the Waterloo one down here close to Madison on the 29th. So really recommend those for folks if it's an interest. I think that's all the PSC updates. Certainly if task force members have any quick questions, we can tackle those. Otherwise, we can move on.
Yeah, are there any questions? There's a lot of information. Thanks, Rory. Any questions from the task force members?
Cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Rory. Well, we're moving quick, which is good. That's going to give us more time for the important stuff here, which is the group discussion on the annual report. I think Kristen is going to be leading this for us today. Kristen, are you going to be kicking us off here? Am I handing it to you?
I will. I think, Rory, did you want to talk about the finalization of recommendations?
Gotcha. Or is
Yeah.
that Alyssa?
You know, let me try and I failed to bring up the Word doc in time. Let me try and find my Word doc quick.
No problem.
I got it real quick. If you want me to share it, Roy, just let me know what you want me to share.
Actually, I think I got it. Can I share screen?
Yes.
All right. All right. How does this look? Can you guys see this kind of? So Mark is going to go ahead and send kind of a more final-ish version of this to the task force members after the meeting, and certainly we'll roll this into our task force report. But just wanted to follow up with you all. You know, took all that comment and feedback and things and worked in the actual changes and kind of just some more finessing on the task force recommendations. Here's a red line. I think there's a couple tiny tweaks we didn't make it into this Word doc, but we'll send along. I think highlighting some of the big things, we were a little vague on describing what the broadband office should do and not just generally, so we emphasized that a little bit. We did identify, and I think there's still lots of work and discussion to be had here in terms of kind of finessing and improving the work on utility locates and kind of managing that as-built data and trying to streamline that permitting and locating work. I think we added another thing in there. We really heard from you all. Certainly, it's a real can of worms to open up, but we're going to continue to push on that and add a little more there. Emphasizing some technical assistance on the workforce side as well, and also kind of expanding that group of stakeholders we bring to the conversation, I think is one thing we heard pretty loud and clear. Same thing, you know, just local community organizations, you know, K-12 schools, DPI folks, all really important components on the workforce pipeline side. Other things here, I think, you know, we try to do better about this, but I think one key piece of recommendation that folks wanted to add was kind of spend a little bit more time as a broadband office advertising and making available that technical assistance and not just kind of providing it on an as-needed basis. So that's something we added in here. Certainly, we do our best to streamline things relative to all the federal requirements and everything, but that recommendation came through as well. And then I think another one on tribal coordination, really emphasizing working with tribal partners, some of the urgency of the BEAD program. That's something we added in there as well after conversation. And line extension, talking about budget funding for broadband, one key thing that folks wanted to emphasize, I don't remember who it was, but I appreciate them raising it. It's been a recommendation in path reports to look at line extension funding, kind of handling those installation costs for that last mile connection from the road to the home. Certainly pulling that back into the report again this year. And again, emphasizing kind of the timing of BEAD and additional state investments fitting in to that BEAD puzzle. On the affordability side, really emphasizing making the math work on the internet service provider side and on the customer side so that we have viable projects that are sustainable long-term and really, you know, successfully implement our program in terms of having good investment now and sustainable investment for financial viability. We emphasize that a little bit more. And then I think people liked the adoption pretty much as is. So we kind of kept that as is. So that's a quick perusal. Thanks all for spending some time last meeting discussing, haggling, helping us refine these. It's no easy task to synthesize months of task force work and complex state, federal programs and broadband policy into a nice document. But I think we've got a really nice result here. Mark is going to, I think I'll sync up with Mark, but we'll send a copy to the task force members just so you have it on hand. And then we will, in the next month or so, pull that into the full report and get kind of everything pulled together. But that's just a quick overview of those task force recommendations.
Thank you very much, Rory. And that's our entrance into our next task today. So this week's homework or this month's homework was a little bit different than what we've done in the past. Typically, we send out a survey, you click a link and you go back and fill out a whole bunch of information. This time, we just asked people to reply to an email with some questions that will help us add some life and some emphasis to some of the recommendations that the task force is making this year. So I've dropped a link into the Google chat, and because I am on the road up in Ashland and don't have great internet right now, Mark is going to share his screen. You can go to the Google Doc that has a copy of the slides that we'll be working from today. And we're going to do one large group discussion that'll go through all of the questions that you received in email. I want to thank those of you that replied to the email. Those inputs have been recorded and passed on. They're also, you'll see them on the slides this afternoon. And with that, I think we're going to start with our group discussion as soon as you're able to share the slides, Mark. Mark is our DJ today, basically. So thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So first slide, if we go past this, our first question that I'd like us to talk about as a group is what data or visualization would you like to see in this year's task force report? And Mark, if you don't mind going to the next slide. We have the recommendations that have already been made up there. 3 of the recommendations we've had for data visualizations is the impact of our work since the beginning of the task force. Someone said that they think the PSC has a great map that shows the percentage of change in broadband. This is our, am I right? This is the 4th or is this the 5th report? 4th, yeah. We didn't know there'd be, I didn't tell you guys there'd be a quiz today. So 4th report, we think back to the first year of the task force, kind of the situation we were in as a state and the emphasis on needing resources. We've come a long way since then. We know we still have a long way to go, but we've done a lot of learning over the years. So our task is, or one of the suggestions is to see if we can visualize that. Second, what is the economic impact that has occurred since the task force has been in place, specifically focused on broadband? And then 3rd request was, or suggestion was, how much of our broadband infrastructure is installed by Wisconsin's contractors or workers? Although the objective is to ensure that everyone has access, there is certainly an economic ripple effect that is occurring from the federal funds result that we are benefiting from. So with that, let's open it up to the task force members. What other data or visualizations might you have? And I'm going to note, Lori, I believe you sent a suggestion for a visualization or data around ACP and the impact of ACP. We did record that. And as I'm reading this list, I think I failed to transfer it over to this slideshow. But the suggestion was that we have a data table or a visualization that shows the local impacts of ACP. Since that's expiring, what can we expect and how can we articulate the need for another program to come up to serve both households and then also ISPs who are still interested in serving customers who might not be able to afford market rate broadband. So what suggestions do we have?
This is Jose. I wonder, I know that there has been over the last couple of years some considerable investment and some federal and of course some state as well. But I wonder if if it would be beneficial to be able to denote in terms of these investments over a period of time. And I think someone else, or if not within the prefixes of these 3 elements, that we are able to tie those with outcomes in terms of impact. Because obviously with investment, the goal has been to ensure that there is equitable and access across the board. And I know that it's easier said than done when we think about access in rural areas in terms of cost effectiveness, because all of those elements have to be taken into account. But I just wondered if there would be any value in terms of being able to show those investments that have taken place over a period of time. And then, of course, the subsequent impact would be the number of individuals or communities that these investments have we've been able to garner maybe higher speed access.
So visualization of investment to impact that also contains information on equity or equitable access and strongly connects that investment to the resulting impact. Great suggestion. Thank you very much, Jose. Other suggestions or comments or ideas? And feel free, we'll be free form today. Feel free to unmute yourself and just join in, task force members.
This is Brittany. I apologize. My camera's not working. I can't turn it on for some reason. Zoom's having a little bit of an issue, but it might not be appropriate for this year, but maybe to think about in reflection of how we are doing in comparison to the proposed goals of the past reports. I remember early on this year, there was a really great graphic presented by the PSC about how some of the work has been, very successful in some areas, the red, yellow, green imaging. So that might be good to do. just to give the legislature an idea of how a lot of these recommendations have been put into place.
Excellent. That's a great idea. For us and also to communicate that to our stakeholders. And Rory, you unmiked.
I'm looking at Mark. I think we've got kind of a nice section Mark's been working on for a while now of kind of progress on prior task force recommendations, right, Mark?
Yes, that is already in the draft format, correct?
So Brittany, great idea. We're on it.
Excellent.
By we, I mean Mark, who works tirelessly.
That's wonderful. It is wonderful. Other suggestions? These are great ideas.
Hi, this is Barbara. I always have an economic development lens on things. So my thought is how, or if there has been, and I'm sure there is, an economic impact when it comes to net migration, positive net migration into the state, and whether broadband, is a factor. And I don't know how to represent that. We know that workforce and recruitment is a key issue for WEDC as a state. So how are we attracting talent into our state? And if broadband, I'm guessing anecdotally, it is a factor, but I'm wondering if there's a way for us to measure that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I have that question myself. Yeah. Rory.
I was just saying, I love that idea. I feel like that could be an entire PhD research project, but we can look and see what the data says that we have. That's interesting.
One of the things, and this wouldn't necessarily be data we share in the report, but I do a lot of housing work, and the surveys that residents of an area fill out are indicating that when they're choosing a home and when they're choosing a community, that broadband, the presence and access of it is a consideration. So that at this point is not statewide. We don't have statewide data on that, but I would guess that community to community, at least, that's a pretty strong factor for people. Confirms what we already know, though, right? Other suggestions that people have, ideas.
One of the things I think we've seen is a lot of growth in local broadband planning efforts over the course of the different reports. And perhaps there's an opportunity to gather resources into some sort of asset map regarding broadband expansion, digital equity related aspects of discounts or devices or digital skills training, and bring that all together. It might be too soon, but we've seen a lot of growth in that.
That's a great idea. Certainly, as our communities have been attending trainings and coming together to work towards using the funding, getting the funding and using the funding effectively would probably be a pretty interesting map. Other questions, comments, suggestions? Well, we can come back to this item if you're inspired later and have a thought on what sort of data visualization or map you would like. Mark, would you mind moving us to the next slide? Thank you. Do you have one of the things that we've traditionally done in our report that seems to really emphasize the recommendations we're making is the use of case studies and different types of illustrations, short paragraphs that underscore the information that we're trying to communicate. So does anyone have any case studies or illustrations that could be used to support our recommendations? And Mark, if you move to the next slide, here's a selection of what's already been offered. One website that has a great information on it, Boulder Junction, as a case example, and certainly we've talked about Boulder Junction a lot over the last couple of years. Our coordination with the tribes and the tribes quoordination with the state and one another. The Lac du Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Chippewa broadband expansion. Quite a few digital literacy examples were offered up, and quite a few examples of digital skills statewide, including the Microsoft announcement of their investment in Wisconsin to spur artificial intelligence. So these are just some of the things that have been offered. What other case studies might we have up our sleeves or might we want to look for in order to illustrate our points? And again, feel free to, you can just unmute your mic and speak.
You know, when I was reflecting on the homework, this one was a little bit challenging because we've had case studies in the previous reports, and it would probably not be great or wise to repeat. So I was wondering if there's a way to have a list of previous case studies so that we could just make sure that we're not repeating ourselves. You know, there's a number of case studies that the extension broadband team is pulling together as well. So it wouldn't be hard for us to make some recommendations that way. But I just in the sake of not repeating ourselves, I was wondering if there's a quick way of doing that for us instead of looking at all through the previous report.
I think that'd be an easy task to do. I know we'll cross-reference for the purposes of writing the report to make sure we're not repeating ourselves.
Yeah,
And
that's,
Mark,
yep, that's what I was gonna say. And then also, yeah, we reached out to Gail, who's not on the meeting today, so she's mustering up all those case studies from all the workshops and seeing what she could provide.
does anyone have any other suggestions or comments on this item? All right, seeing none, Mark, do you mind taking us to the next slide? So now we're focusing or drilling down a little bit further into best practices. Do we have any case studies or illustrations that exemplify some of the best practices that we have seen evolve over the past few years? When we look at how we're working now as a state and what we're doing now versus where we were maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we've certainly learned a lot. We've kind of grown some really nice, great practices or best practices. Next slide, please, Mark. And here's a smattering of what was offered up. The UW Planning and Technical Assistance, Regional Broadband Planning Workshops, et cetera. And I promise you that Extension didn't submit that. Somebody else did. Thank you very much for the submission. Chippewa Valley Technical College, United Way Eau Claire's partnership in providing over 900 devices and internet access to students at the technical college and to workforce development. So we've got some really good examples there on education and capacity building and also digital literacy and equity. What other best practices and examples of best practices might we have? And this can be anything from these broad community-wide efforts to, we've talked a lot about things like locates and some of the more day-to-day challenges that a lot of our providers in our communities have overcome when they are working to expand broadband. Do we have anything that could be big efforts, but do we even have any smaller efforts that might be worth highlighting and spreading the word about?
This is Chris. One of the things that I think we probably don't talk about enough, and I think it's a really cool aspect of what we're doing with broadband is the Navigator program. And maybe I don't have a specific specific use case from that, but there might be one that's there talking about how we keep our finger on the pulse, so to speak, of what's happening in the communities that we're trying to impact. And I think that's just, from my standpoint, I don't know what other states are doing that, but I know as I've talked to other states, it's not every state. So there are states that's not happening. And I think that's a miss. And I think we're doing a good job of that. I don't know if there's a story there, but it's an area.
Yeah, Chris, I think there's a story there. Amber Sharonbrock from United Way, Greater Chippewa Falls Valley, has done excellent case studies up there and is doing work. They've had meetings. I attended one of the meetings. It was great where they're focused on 4 different areas and getting out there to make a digital inclusion plan and be those navigators in those communities out there.
Just a question here, guys. As a union contractor, are we working with the unions and their training facilities to make sure that they're training in these aspects? I'm sorry. I know it looks like, we're working with technical schools and whatnot, but I think obviously unions would be a great resource as well for training the future of tomorrow is installing and these initiatives.
Rory, you and Mike, did you have an answer to that?
Right as I unmuted, Alyssa unmuted, so I was gonna let her go first.
I think there's probably two pieces to that. One is there's like communication, outreach, and coordination. And I think, yes, the answer to that is there's been that sort of communication, coordination, discussion, outreach. I think specific direct pipelines between the broadband office or the broadband task force plan and unions has not been included, more of the coordination, information sharing about workforce needs, anticipated workforce needs. So I think that could be, an additional recommendation, or looking at where the workforce section of the recommendations is and, amending it to, it's not up on the screen, but I feel like there's a list of entities, and amending it to make sure that specific, union outreach is targeted. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it certainly does. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Josh. Other suggestions for this one for best practices and exemplars?
This is Brittany. I'll nominate the New North regional broadband model as something that we should probably highlight. There are other regions that are also supporting broadband, but I think there's a really nice, clear story that has some trajectory from where they started to where they are now. That would be really nice to kind of cover.
That is an excellent example. They've done a great job. Other suggestions? All right. Seeing none on this one, Mark, would you mind taking us to the next slide?
That's the last slide.
That's the last slide. It's only 1:33. So before we close down this portion, are there any, just thinking in terms of the report as a whole and how we illustrate and underscore some of these recommendations, what feedback or suggestions in general do you have as a task force? No suggestions? Is there anything from the previous years that you would like to make sure is contained in the report?
This group has talked a lot about the ACP and talked about the ending of some of those programs and what that could mean to adoption, especially those people that have been participating in those programs. And I know in the past, we've had language in there about the need to continue looking at options to help provide subsidies. I think that's an important point. There was one we put in the first year. It'll come back to me in a minute. I'll come back if I remember what it was. There's another one though that I thought was important to maybe just make sure it was in the report again this year. I'll think of it.
Okay. All right. Well, that then, unless we have other suggestions or any final thoughts on this portion of the agenda, seeing none, I will pass it back to you, Chris.
All right, Kristen, thank you. Sorry, I need to make glasses on so I can see what's on our agenda. So that takes us to next steps already. Is that correct? I didn't skip anything. We're moving very quickly today. I think we're going to give people some time back on a sunny, early, late spring afternoon. We have some next steps coming up. Our next meeting. Mark, did you want to talk about the June or July meeting?
Yeah, just stay tuned for the next agenda. We might not have a June meeting, depending on how the task force report goes, as it's due towards the end of June there.
I think everybody's busy eating cheese curds for June Dairy Month anyway, right? Any other comments, questions, suggestions, or input from the broadband group here before we end for the day? It's a quiet group today. It's tough. It's a nice day outside.
I guess I'll chime in, Chris. Quick question. As the newbie on the force here, is there how often or frequently do we typically look forward to the next meeting? Just to I feel personally, just probably from my lack of experience here. I want to be better prepared, if you will, to have better input and feedback for the board, right? So what types of things do you guys look for? Is there more agendas or topics that can come out in advance prior to these meetings?
I think my quick response is, Josh, you joined us at a kind of an interesting time in our cycle because we're kind of wrapping up recommendations and creating that report. So a little bit, there's no homework or prep work for you to do just because it's a weird time in our cycle. I think, usually we meet monthly, usually target like that third Wednesday of the month. And then, I think Mark is an awesome resource and open book in terms of if you have ideas or topics you think you want to have discussed, or agendas or speakers or things like that you'd like to bring to the table. As staff, we kind of try and curate that for you every month, new topics, things like that. And so if you have ideas or things you want to talk about, you can always pass that along to Mark.
Okay,
and then certainly when we start kind of the next cycle of the task force year, once the report's published, we'll kind of come to you all and say, hey, what topics do we want to talk about this year? What's of interest? Who should we have speak? Things like that, and kind of curate it that way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And even from your perspective, if again, the work you've been doing and your union background, if you wanted to give a presentation topic on that, that's something we can discuss as well.
Yeah, certainly. I feel out of touch. I feel like I have a lot to say, but your report's about to get put together. So, I mean, I've kind of missed the ball on that, but I'm looking forward to the next year and any input I can have and help to make sure that obviously the new federal funding that's coming, I do feel like I have a lot of input there, good or bad. As a contractor, I mean, it's important. And I see the defaults that other communication companies are having because they can't get the stuff. And, I think we can resolve these issues. So.
Alyssa always says complex but solvable. So I think
absolutely.
Yeah, and Rory made a really good point, and I hope we all heard, and that is that if you have ideas for things we should be discussing at these meetings, don't hesitate to reach out to them.
Okay.
Jeff, you have your hand up.
Yes, I've come across a couple of situations, and I'm sure they're going to keep coming as the contractors are out there and keep working on their the projects and getting the stuff in the ground. But I have one particular one, actually two of them, and they're coming past their road. There's probably about 5-6 houses down that particular road. It's a short distance, but I'm told that they're in a donut hole, that they aren't getting service, and the one person is on a town board, and she says, I'm on a Zoom and we're supposed to have at least 10, and she says it'll drop or whatever, and she'll drop off the call and can't do her work. And it just they said they're right. I drive down the road, they're right out just on the end of their road, but they aren't coming down that road. And the answer I get is the FCC picked the places that are getting service, and it just then the next question comes up. They said, well, how come we're telling everybody that it's everybody will get internet in this state? And it's just like and I have another situation where it's really close. Is he says, my wife and I are both working from home. We have 2 kids that are going into middle school, and for us all to work on online, we can't work with what we have. And they said that the line is close, but it would cost us $5,800 to extend it and bring it to our house. So I just don't know what to tell some of these folks and to give them any kind of answer that is satisfying for them.
I mean, I could take a crack at it, certainly, Representative. If you ever want to pass along the specific constituent question, we can help you tackle and get some more information specific to the location. But I feel like I'm going to steal Brett's words when I say, sounds like the FCC, maybe Rural Digital Opportunity Fund award, and it's a little bit of a checkerboard out there. Things are not cleanly designed and laid out for projects to be deployed like networks are. Maybe Brett, you want to go ahead? I don't want to keep talking if you have some comments on that.
No, I don't have anything on that one, I guess. So I'll let you finish, but I got something maybe to just that I thought of regarding the report for Kristen there. So,
I mean, maybe my last thing I'd say to you, Representative, is, certainly the PSC is in this weird place where we have to clean up all the little tidbits and corners and actually make a solution that fills in all those gaps. And so it's happening. It's not happening as fast as anyone would like it to, but certainly members of this task force are a real part of making that happen soon and in the right way, and solve just those exact problems you're describing, because that's an unfortunately common story we hear.
I was thinking as that story was being told, Rory, that we always think of case studies, right, as being the positive things that we've accomplished, but this could be something that supports our need to continue looking at that last mile and how we subsidize last mile implementations, because that's a great example of how people are literally on the edge of an area that's being served and unable to get connected. So it might be a good, I'll call it reverse case study. Brett, did you have your question or your thought ready?
Sure. And I guess, yeah, just commenting on Representative Mursaw's, the whole map process is frustrating even for the provider side, because sometimes lines are drawn down the center of a road too. And so one side's served, one side's unserved. Well, we're going to build fiber down the road, so we're going to serve both sides. And the reverse happens, that if something shows up that it's served, it kind of cuts off other areas that would be considered unserved, and it just doesn't make sense to build down those areas. So it does come back to the kind of the accuracy of the mapping, and then how is a network built. And so I don't know if that helps or not, but I guess just thinking back on your question, like on visualizations and that for the report, and I'm assuming by now the PSC probably has enough data from their broadband grants and that they kind of can see what the cost trends are on like miles of fiber in these projects and stuff like that. And we've really seen, and I've said this before, really seen the impacts of inflation in fiber construction and the materials and all that. So I wonder if some graph or chart or whatever that shows the impacts of inflation on deployment might be useful, just so everybody thinks it's, there's all this money out there, it should be doing great things. Well, basically what we're seeing on our projects is all this extra money is doing is paying for inflation. So we're not serving any other customers, we're not getting any more fiber in the ground, we're just the extra funding is just paying for inflation. So I guess that's my only thought on the, I know the report wants to show all the good, but it should show the bad too, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Brett. We did have a note, I think earlier this year, I think it was you brought up the cost when you bid a project versus the cost of the goods the materials by the time the project is actually underway, and how that really does impact bottom line, but also changes what we can say are reasonable expectations for what is able to be done for the amount of money that we have to spend. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up again. That's really important that we understand the parameters of the economy that we're living in. Yeah. And Alyssa, your hand is up.
Oh, I just wanted to comment on the Representative Burson, the sort of the issue of that high cost to connect. And I just wanted to sort of draw your attention to that this task force has recommended those line extension grants, and that's really the circumstance that they're designed for. And that was in the recommendations I saw on the screen, and it has been on the recommendations, but our office certainly sees a lot of those. I'm stealing Michael Perry's words, but broadband so close you can smell it problems, but also far enough away you can't pay for it. So I did just wanted to point to you that that's what the line extension might be for. And so hopefully that gets some funding or some opportunity for us to implement as a state.
Thank you. Other comments or questions or things about the report or suggestions for the good of the cause? This is great conversation. And Lori.
Yeah, I have a comment that would go along with Representative Mursaw's comments as well. Sometimes it's not just the cost of getting fiber down that road. Sometimes it's an easement issue. And I'm speaking from experience here that we have run into a couple of situations where we get to a private road, which is often the case at the end of the road, it becomes private at some point, and then we need to get utility easement to run that cable along that private road, and we need to get it from every landowner on the path. And every now and then we run into a landowner who, for whatever reason, and there are many of those, they do not want to provide an easement, and then we're stuck. And it sounds, from our attorney, it sounds legally there's not a lot we can do. And so I'm wondering if that's something that should be considered in the legislature, about what the legal ramifications of utility easements are, and what are the rights of the utility in a case like that.
Thank you very much, Lori. Other comments or questions or suggestions for the good of the cause? As always, your input has been invaluable and really enhances the work that we're doing. So thank you very much for your contributions, everyone. And Chris, back to you.
Thanks, Kristen. And I want to echo that. I learn in these meetings every month, so I appreciate everybody's input in the conversations. It's always great to hear different perspectives from providers and from educators and from people in different industries. So thank you for that input. That does bring us to the end of our meeting agenda for the day. And so I said we were going to get you out early, and then we talked for another 20 minutes. So I'm sorry about that, but I do hope that you guys enjoy the nice weather outside today. And as Mark mentioned, watch for the next meeting. It may not be June. I don't think that decision's been made yet, but if it's not, it'll be in July. Again, probably looking at that third week, but more to come. And again, if you have any ideas for discussion topics, we'll be getting ready to spin up a brand new year of the task force when we reconvene, and we'll be looking for those ideas. So bring them or send them. Anything else from the PSC? Okay. Thank you.
Just for me, if Brett mentioned inflation, Brett, if you have a case study or have a write-up, if you just want to send that to me, we can see about incorporating that into the report possibly for a case study.
Yeah, it's a great idea. Otherwise, thank you all for your time this afternoon, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.